Hey guys, in this video we're going to be dissecting an extremely complicated but also educational Scrabble endgame that occurred at the conclusion of round 23 of the 2024 Scrabble Players Championship held in South Bend, Indiana. The two players were Chloe Fatsis and Seth Lipkin, and it was an extremely important game as both of these players were still in contention to make the two-person final, which would be decided just 5 rounds later at the end of round 28. So a lot at stake here, and Chloe faces the first big decision. At this point, both players have 7 tiles on their rack, so they both have full racks and there are no tiles left in the bag. Chloe is sitting at a 9-point deficit, 376 to 385, with AEFNTUV on her rack. She knows from her tile tracking that Seth is sitting on DEILNRZ on his side of the board. So she's got a very tough and important decision to make on this turn. Chloe thought for a while here and eventually settled on Fa for 28 points above the E and the A entreated, making FE and AA. This looks like a very solid play. It scores well. It blocks Seth's highest scoring play with his Z, namely Rez under the O and Audio, which would have scored 24 points. And it also saves some decent options for Chloe's V on the next turn. For instance, she could play Venom on the 4th row, which would score 20, or if that gets blocked, she could still play Gov from the G and Dougs, only scoring 8 points but keeping the very flexible E and T leave, which should allow her to play out on the next turn. However, as I'm going to show you guys in just a bit, this play with optimal response from Seth actually would have lost the game. But the only way for Seth to win the game after Fa requires an insane amount of foresight and precise calculation that I think would have been almost impossible for any human to do, especially under time pressure. Seth had under 5 minutes to respond to Chloe's play of Fa. Before I show you this line, I want to show you how the game actually transpired. Seth elected to play Ads from the A and Bella for 13 points, and his logic here makes a lot of sense. He wants to get rid of his Z immediately because there aren't a lot of good places to score with it, especially after Chloe blocked Rez, and it's going to quickly become a liability because if Chloe goes out and Seth still has the Z on his rack, Chloe's going to get a 20-point bonus, and that's easily going to be enough to ensure she wins the game. So Seth needs to get rid of his Z. And this looks like a good way to do it because he keeps a very flexible set of tiles, 2 vowels and 3 consonants, E, I, L, and R, on his rack, which should allow him to play out relatively quickly and also have good responses to anything Chloe might try to set up. So this is what Seth did, and Chloe responded with Venom for 20 points to the OM. This is not her only winning play, but it's easily her best winning play and also the most straightforward to calculate. And now Seth is in a pickle because he's down 26 points, and while he does have a nice 5-tile leave here, E, I, L, and R, he cannot play all of them at once on this turn, and Chloe only has a T and a U left. And she is going to be going out next turn because she threatens 2 outplays that are far enough apart on the board. She can play Ute to the E and Venom that she just opened, or Gut from the G and Dougs. And like I said, these 2 plays are physically far enough apart that Seth is unable to block them both at once, so no matter what Seth does, Chloe is going out. So that means Seth is only going to get 1 more play before this game ends, so all he can do is try to score as many points as he can while getting rid of as many tiles as he can, and he does that by playing Liven for 20 through the V and Venom. This is tied with a bunch of other 5-letter words in the same spot, such as Riven and Liver, for the best play. After Seth did this, then Chloe made her only remaining outplay of Gut for 5 points, and that was enough for her to win by 13, with a final score of 431 to 418 after getting 2 more points from Seth's unplayed R. After the game, Chloe and Seth went into a very deep and detailed discussion of this endgame, which was super nice to see. Interestingly, Seth's first regret was going back to the initial turn. Instead of Ads, he felt he should have played Ads with the E at the end, getting rid of his E, which is a flexible tile, but scoring 2 more points, and more critically, saving an outplay in response if Chloe still plays Venom. This is true, but as I'll show you guys, it still wouldn't have been enough for Seth to win. Seth's idea was that if Chloe responded with Venom as she did in the actual game, then Seth now can play out with Liner through her E and Venom. He doesn't need his own E for Liner as Chloe provides the E with her play of Venom. But that is still going to leave Seth well short because Liner is only 10 points and Chloe is still up 24 in this position. So even though Seth gets 4 bonus points from Chloe's unplayed T and U, he's still going to lose by 10, 414 to 424. So playing Ads with the E actually wouldn't have really helped Seth much at all. It would have gotten him a couple more spread points, but it would not have earned him a win. Seth's next thought was, what if in the original position, instead of playing Ads on the top right, he forestalled getting rid of his Z for 1 turn to prioritize blocking Chloe's 20-point play of Venom? What if he played something like Dom for 12 to the OM? Well, as the players discovered, this also wasn't going to work, because while Chloe on her next turn wouldn't have her 20-point play of Venom, she can still play Gov for 8 points from the G and Dugs, which nicely sheds not only her V, but also her troublesome U. And after this play, Chloe with E and T is threatening to go out with Auntie from the A and Boa on her next turn, so Seth, now sitting on EIL and RZ, would need to do something about that. He also now needs to urgently get rid of his Z, so his best play here would be Azine, scoring 15, keeping LR. This ties the game, and Chloe can't actually go out with ENT on this board, but the problem is neither can Seth with LR. Even though he has just 2 tiles, this board is so constricted that he's not going to be able to play them both at once. So Chloe here can just do something like Neon down the E column through the N in Magnets and the O in Audio for 12, and now Seth is lost, because he can only play one of his 2 tiles with something like Farrell for 7, and now Chloe with just a T easily goes out on her next play with something like TE and Yuda on the bottom left for 5, and Chloe wins easily in this variant by a score of 431 to 419. I won't go through all the variations, but it turns out playing a different tile in the same spot for Seth instead of Dom, such as Nam or Ram for 10, also wouldn't work. I'll let you guys check the details. Seth then briefly considered a play in a completely different area of the board, namely Grizz for 15 points from the G and Dugs. At first, this seemed intriguing because Seth actually sets himself up for plays like Zen from the Z on his next turn, which would hit a double word score and score 24 points. However, Seth quickly dismissed Grizz as an option once he realized that Chloe also has an E and an N on her own rack, so it's actually going to be Chloe, not Seth, who hits Zen for 24 on her next turn and increases her lead to almost 30 points, which Seth felt would almost certainly be insurmountable. However, as it turns out, Seth was actually mistaken. Grizz would have been a winning play for him, and in fact, the only winning play for him in the original position. But winning after Grizz requires several more turns of precise play and precise calculation on Seth's end. Let me show you. As I mentioned before, Seth figured after Grizz and Chloe responding with Zen for 24, he would be lost after she takes a 28-point lead. However, what Seth failed to realize in this position was that with TUV on Chloe's rack, she is actually now V-stuck. There is nowhere on this board where Chloe can play her V, and Seth can use that to his advantage and make up this large deficit. But even if Seth realizes that Chloe is V-stuck here, he's going to have to play 100% precisely from here on out if he wants to win this game. The key for Seth is going to be playing just 1 or maybe 2 tiles per turn to maximize his score. Remember, since Chloe can't play her V, she is never going to play out. So even if normally Seth might want to play out as quickly as possible, here he's in no rush and should take as many turns as he need to maximize his score. And Seth actually has a single winning play in this position, dropping his D for 12 points with Dom. Note that Seth can actually get 2 more points for the D with ID and DE next to the I and Grizz and the E and Zen, but this would be a disastrous mistake as Chloe could now unload her V with Dev and win the game easily. So the idea with Dom is Seth still scores well with his D, he also stops Chloe from scoring well with her T with Tom in the same spot, and Seth sets himself up to play Lev with his L and his E to the V and Vog on his next turn, which will score well and Chloe actually cannot block. Chloe's best response with TUV would be to score 8 points with it and TE. Since Tom for 10 is no longer available, 8 is the most she's going to be able to get. And now Seth once again has a single winning play. And it's not the 15-point Lev I was mentioning on the turn before that he set up. If Seth plays Lev immediately, then Chloe's best response is to play PU for 5 points from the pie on the board. And this would put her up by 14. And now Seth can get 5 points maximum with his N, making on and in, but that is going to fall just short, because Seth is now down 9, but he's only going to get 2 times 4 or 8 points for Chloe's unplayed V, so Chloe would win by 1 in this line, 441 to 440. So then the question becomes, if not Lev in this position, then what? Well, the key observation Seth needs to make here is that he does still want to play Lev, but he doesn't need to play it now. Remember, Chloe cannot block it. And he should switch the order of his plays to prioritize blocking Chloe's highest scoring play for her U. So Seth's only win in this position is not to play Lev, but to play Pin for 5 points from the pie. The idea here is that Seth now stops Chloe from playing PU in that spot. So instead of scoring 5 for her U, she only gets 3. Now you might be thinking, alright, it's only 2 fewer points Chloe's getting for her U. What difference can that really make? Well, all the difference, because now, and only now, does Seth play Lev to go out for 15 points. And this time, after getting 8 for Chloe's V, Seth is the one who wins by a point, 440 to 439. Truly amazing stuff. So what really happened here? What was the difference between this line in which Seth won by 1 and the last line I showed you guys in which Chloe won by 1? In both of those lines, Seth got down Lev for 15 points, so that's a wash. And in both of those lines, Seth got down his in for 5 points. Here, pin was 5 points, and in the last line, in and un was also 5 points. So the only difference was that by playing his n first, Seth reduced the value of Chloe's U from 5 points to 3 points. And that seemingly inconsequential 2-point difference, just because of how all the numbers aligned here, was the deciding factor between Seth winning by 1 and losing by 1. Pretty amazing if you ask me. So winning this endgame for Seth in the original position after Chloe's play of Fa requires him finding his only winning play on not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 consecutive turns. On turn 1, he must play Grizz for 15. After Chloe responds with Zen, then Seth must play Dom for 12 and nothing else on this turn if he wants to win. After Chloe drops her T for 8, then Seth, like I said here, must play Pin for 5. Playing Lev immediately loses, anything else loses. He has to play Pin. And then finally, after Chloe plays her U for 3, now and only now does Seth go out again. Lev, his only winning play here, winning this game by 1 point in truly amazing fashion. However, that's actually not it, because in the original position, Seth also needs to consider the possibility of what if Chloe doesn't fall into the trap of getting V-stuck by playing Zen in response to Grizz? What if she just ignores the Z and plays Venom, saving outplays as she did before? Then Seth is going to find himself in this position. He'll have DELN and Chloe will have just TU left, and Chloe is up by 24. And Seth can win here, but once again, it requires perfect play. There is a single winning move for Seth here, and it is not easy. It's not the obvious Z for 26 points, because if Seth plays Z, Chloe goes out with Ute for 6 and wins the game by 8, 434 to 426. So then you might be thinking, well, what was the point of Grizz if Seth can't even follow it up with his big Z play? Well, another key idea with Grizz is that in the original variation I showed where Seth played ads, Chloe had 2 outs after Venom. She had U to the E and also Gut from the G in Doug's. And now Chloe doesn't have Gut because Grizz is there. So Chloe actually is only threatening 1 outplay in this position. It's kind of hard to believe with as flexible a 2-tile rack as TU, but Chloe's only outplay is Ute to the E in Venom. So Seth can block that. But he needs to be very precise in how he blocks it. Because if he's not careful, let's say he plays Lead over here for 8, then Chloe actually has a new outplay because the U fits between the L and the V, and Chloe's going to go out with Ton and Love and win the game easily. So that doesn't work. So Seth's only winning play is to play Del for 8 points. And he needs to play Del because not only does this actually block Chloe's outplays, but it saves Zen for Seth's next turn. And Zen is actually unblockable. Because Chloe's only valid play in that part of the board now would be it for 4 points, but that still allows Zen because TE is a valid word. So this actually only gives Seth 2 more points than he had before for Zen. So that's not Chloe's best play. Her best option here would just be PU for 5 points, and after that, then now and only now does Seth play Zen, and this time he wins. He wins by 5 to be exact, 434 to 429. So once again, Seth can win with Grizz, but regardless of whether Chloe plays Zen or Venom, Seth needs to play perfectly. He'd have only 1 winning line in each of those cases. It's not easy to see, and he needs to calculate it flawlessly, which is super, super hard to do under any circumstances, especially in a high-stakes game such as this one with under 5 minutes on your clock. So the fact that Grizz wins for Seth begs the question, could Chloe have made a better play than Fa in this position where she was down 9 with a full rack of 7 tiles? And it turns out the answer is yes, Chloe can win this game here, but it's not easy to do. One thought you might have, based on the analysis we just looked at, is what if Chloe first plays Gov, stopping Grizz and the subsequent winning line for Seth? Well, the problem with this is that Seth doesn't have Grizz, but he now has Rez for 24 under the Owen audio. And you might recall earlier I mentioned that one nice thing about Fa for Chloe, besides scoring well, was stopping this play of res. And it turns out that Chloe is not able to win in this position down 25. One idea she does have is scoring 30 points with Phantom to the OM, but the problem is that this gives Seth the A he needs to go out with Nidal for 12, which will result in a 9-point win for Seth, 423 to 414. Chloe does have better options here than playing Phantom immediately, since, like I just showed you guys, that does allow Seth to go out, but it turns out she does not have any winning lines here. The best line that the computer engine Macondo finds actually loses by a single point for Chloe here. It's pretty tough, but I'll leave it as an exercise to see if you guys can find it. Like I said though, Chloe does not appear to have any wins after Gov and Res, so she needs to find a different option besides Gov. And now you might be thinking, what if Chloe plays to the OM first? Maybe with Phantom, the 30-point play we just looked at, or Venom for 20, which she played in the actual line that happened during the game. Both of these are going to lose as well. Let's look at Venom first. If Chloe plays Venom, Seth appears once again to have a single winning play. This time, that win is Zine for 26 to the Ian Venom. And this looks crazy at first, putting a Z in the triple line, but the key is, with AFTU on her rack, Chloe cannot actually play through that Z. And as such, she needs to figure out what to do here, because Seth is now threatening to play Res for 36 points. But the problem is, if Chloe blocks that, she's going to be scoring almost nothing. Her best block would be Tav for just 18 points, which keeps an F and a U on her rack. And Seth does have an outplay here, the sneaky Alder for 7 points from the A and Boa, which is easily going to be enough to win. Seth is going to win by 14, 428 to 414. If instead Chloe tries to take the scoring route, going with Fa now for 28, then Seth needs to be a little bit careful, because Alder, as I'll leave you guys to check, would lose by 2. But now he can play Res and not go out since this is so many points. He scores 36, going up by 23, and Chloe can only get 5 points with her UT with Gut, and that's going to fall well short for her. Seth is going to hold on and win by 12, 447 to 435. So, once again, Venom not a winning option for Chloe as her first play in the original possession since it falls to Zine. Instead of Venom, what if Chloe plays Phantom? What looks really cool about Phantom is not only does it score 30 points, it saves Yuvia in 2 spots for Chloe, to the A in Phantom as well as to the A in Treated, and Seth cannot block both of these. So how is Seth going to win after Phantom? Well, Seth indeed cannot stop Chloe from going out, but he can score a ton of points with Lizard through the A, which gets him 40 and also unloads the Z and a bunch of other tiles from his rack. And that's going to be enough for him to win, because he goes up by 19, Chloe goes out with Yuvia for 11, and she does get 4 additional points from his unplayed tiles, but Seth holds on to win by 4, 425 to 421. However, while we saw that Phantom followed by Yuvia doesn't work for Chloe in the original position, this overall sequence should give us an idea for a possibly superior option for her. Phantom wasn't good because it gave Seth a large play. But whenever you have a 2-turn endgame sequence in Scrabble and doing it in one order doesn't work, your first thought should always be, what happens if I do it in the other order? What happens if instead of playing Phantom first, Chloe plays Yuvia first? Now you might be thinking, okay, sure, Chloe's threatening Phantom on her next turn, but she doesn't have another out, so can't Seth just block Phantom? Yes, he can, but as we'll see, that's going to leave him still with a Z to deal with, and Chloe's going to have enough good scoring options on this board with AFNT that she's going to be able to overtake him quite easily. It's easy to see that Seth absolutely has to block Phantom here. If he tries to just get rid of his Z with something like a Zide on the top right, then Phantom, which scores 30 points, is going to win easily for Chloe. So it turns out Seth is lost here, but his best play, according to Macondo, is to drop his in playing Nam for 10. Then, with AFNT, Chloe can start by dropping her F for 26, which will put her in the lead by 18 points. And now the problem for Seth is he's still got the Z and 5 other tiles to deal with. Here his best bet is to play Ads for 15. It's better than Azide for 17, because Seth would not be able to go out with LR on his next turn after Azide. However, as we'll see, he can go out after Ads. But it's still not going to be enough. Because now with ANT, Chloe's most simple option to win is just going out with Nat for 6, and this would win the game by 15. She actually gets 2 more spread points by not going out here playing Taxi for 22, because even though Seth can now go out with Girl for 6, he doesn't get that much more from her rack, only 2 more, and she ends up winning by 17, in this case 435 to 418. So this would be the optimal endgame sequence for both players after Chloe starts with Yuvia. I'm not going to go through any more of Seth's possible responses to Yuvia, but like I said, it's obvious that he has to block Phantom, And I'll leave it to you guys to show that any other one-tile blocks, such as Dom or Rom, won't leave him faring any better than Nam. So there you have it, guys. That is Chloe's best winning play in the original position. Once again, Yuvia for 11 points to the A entreated, saving Phantom, and if that gets blocked, saving a good follow-up sequence. Now, is that Chloe's only win in the original position? It turns out it is not. There are a couple other moves that win, but they're even more complicated and I think even tougher to see and calculate than Yuvia. I'm not going to be going through them in this video. I'll leave it to you guys as an exercise or a fun Macondo exploration project if you want to see what the other wins are. Yuvia, though, is a really tough play to see over the board. It's not every day that your best play scores just 11 points and keeps the generally mediocre-looking A, F, and T on your rack. But as it turns out, in this particular endgame, Yuvia would have been Chloe's best path to victory. As I said earlier, during the game, she played Fa for 28, which I think makes a ton of sense. It looks good intuitively, you score well, you stop Seth's highest scoring Z-play, and you leave a reasonably flexible set of tiles on your next rack. It's also super hard to see that Seth's play of Grizz from the G and Dugs would have resulted in a win in one of the many complicated variations I showed you guys earlier. However, as I said, Seth did not find this over the board. He played Ads for 13, which again, if you're not able to calculate all of the different lines of Grizz, which is super hard to do, Ads makes a lot of sense intuitively as well. And Chloe was able to capitalize with Venom for 20, which, as I mentioned earlier, resulted in a pretty straightforward win, as Seth here cannot stop Chloe from going out, and played Liven, resulting in a 13-point win for Chloe after Gut when all was said and done, 431 to 418. So, technically, both of these players did make game-losing mistakes. Chloe with Fa could have won by force with Yuvia. Fa technically loses if Seth plays optimally, but to play optimally, Seth would have needed to play Grizz, which he failed to do, playing Ads instead. At that point, Chloe was able to win the game fairly cleanly. That being said, both Chloe's turn where she played Fa and Seth's turn where he played Ads are super, super complicated. I think the fact that this video on an endgame alone is over 20 minutes is a great testament to that, and both Fa and Ads, as I've talked about, make a lot of intuitive sense given the position that each player was in. So, really interesting stuff, and I think it goes to show you guys just why Scrabble engines like Macondo are ultimately going to be convincingly stronger than humans. Because while this endgame maybe makes some sense now that I just spent a 20-minute video going over it in detail, at the end of the day, it's so difficult, if not impossible, for a human to precisely calculate everything I just talked about, let alone under time pressure. Macondo, though, found all of this in under a minute. In any case, I really hope this video was fun and educational. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate all of your support, and I look forward to seeing you soon for the next video. Thanks again, guys, and have a good one. Bye-bye.